Johnathan, welcome. Thanks very much for coming. I'd like for you to introduce yourself. Just tell us a bit about your role at Coles and a bit about your experience overall.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for taking the time, Steve. I've been with Coles just over 4 years now. For 3.5 of those years, I was running non-food as a general manager there. And for the last 3 to 4 months, I've been running the packaged part of Coles, which is looking after grocery, non-food, and dairy freezer convenience as a new executive general manager for Coles.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Congratulations on the new appointment.
Thank you.
New appointment. Not just with Coles, but in your experience throughout your career, you have dealt with Advantage and getting supplier feedback through the Advantage program. What do you see as the benefits for retailers in receiving the feedback from suppliers this way?
I mean, it is a two-way street, right? Because we also give feedback to the suppliers as well. But what's really important for us is it boils down to the execution of our strategy. And I've spoke to you before, Steve, about how essentially, you actually look to how can you actually try and evolve a matrix and how can you actually improve your score. And you look at the market and you look at your competitors, and it's always important to know how you're going to win and how you're going to get in front. But the reason Advantage is really important for us is because it actually allows us to monitor how we're actually delivering our strategy with our suppliers as well. And the supply base is so fundamental in being able to support us to deliver that strategy. So getting feedback from them in terms of the way we can improve and what we can improve, not just to support their business development, but also to support our business development, is one of those things that we really passionately believe is something that adds a lot of value to our business. And that's why we spend so much time with it, both the main survey that we do, but also the pulses that we do throughout the year as well.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to talk about both of those. You mentioned at the start, though, that you quite like the opportunity to provide feedback back to suppliers through the program as well. You have hundreds of people in your organisation who do that, and thank you for your support, by the way. What benefits do you see from providing that feedback to suppliers through the program?
Oh, look, it really does vary, and a lot of suppliers do take part within the overall Advantage survey, and it's mixed. You've got some of the suppliers really at the top of their game where they're ultra competitive and they want to become number one in their field, but you've also got them truly trying to understand the why, and they get to know not only what their score is, but actually the reasons why they've been scored at that. And you do interviews with us all as well. So from the category managers, the BCMs, the general managers, and myself, we all give you direct feedback as to what's working well with a supplier, what can they improve, and we do it really objectively because we want to improve the working relationship with them as well. So what you find when we do, certainly when I do the tops with the suppliers, it's always on the agenda, and they want feedback really directly about how can they improve and ultimately how do they adjust the way they work with us, whether it be through how they communicate with the supply chain teams, whether it's the operations teams in stores, whether it's the category management teams. They just ultimately want to learn, and they take that feedback and they build a plan, and ultimately it becomes part of the joint business plan. Yep. But then on the other side, you've got some suppliers where we don't get a lot of feedback at all, but I would say mostly the suppliers take it extremely seriously, as do we.
That's the main programs. We're giving and receiving feedback. You've also been working for a number of years now with Advantage on some bespoke work for Coles, which is about understanding some key 6-7 type questions about checking in with suppliers on your strategy, how you're engaging with them, that you do on a 2-monthly basis.
Yep.
What are the benefits of that more frequent route?
It's one of those things where you actually use the pulse to actually understand how is your strategy actually evolving and how is it actually landing with the suppliers. And you get a different subset of suppliers answering the pulse as you do the main survey. But there's also a scoring system as well as well. So you actually look at that pulse to actually understand what areas within the overall Advantage survey questions are going well and which not. And then you've got the main one which you compare it to. Now, as long as you've got a similar number of suppliers doing each one, then you see the score, starting to grow as the strategy is evolving, and you really start to deliver on your strategic initiatives. But sometimes you can get some mixed messages in the pulse, but the majority of cases it does really work very well.
Yeah. Okay. We also at Advantage did some work for Coles on understanding the supplier's view of how you're engaging with sustainability. Yep. Or environmental social governance agendas. Tell me about how that landed in your business.
Look, when we work with you, it's it's important to really recognise the trust that we have within the relationship, and how you can actually gather a lot of information from us, and you really have a knack of getting great quality information from a supplier, and they know it's going to be dealt with from us in a very honest, open, transparent way. And the work that we did for us on the sustainability piece was really about trying to give us a view of how suppliers are actually evolving their strategies with regards to sustainability, and how that's going to impact us when we start to look at Scope 3 emissions. And it was really well received right the way through the business.
And impact on the business, so from any of these programs that you run, either the main program that we do with you or from some of the more bespoke ones, can you tell us anything about what you might have done, what actions you might have taken that's made a difference to Coles?
Look, there's really many, and it varies by area. If I sort of go to the package space to understand the things that we've really tried to build on with the suppliers, I think some of the things which we've got feedback on in the last survey is about how do we actually really ensure that we're all tied up as a business, that when we actually deliver joint business plans and we look at certain elements of the execution of those plans, that everybody's tied up, and understanding how can we make sure that every part of our business and the suppliers' business is absolutely in sync with each other. And we've been working quite heavily with the operations teams recently about promotion displays, promotion stock weight, off locations and these types of things to actually gain more sales, ultimately with more market share. And ultimately we just go back to the strategy every time, and our strategy is about winning in the second century. And when you actually work that through the supply base, the feedback that you get is how can they support us winning. So when we talk about operational execution and really trying to drive that change in the business, it's also really great to see that they're targeting the things that are really going to touch the sweet spot for us as well. So it's open feedback, but then we build a plan with them to adjust it.
Yeah, great. And final question, how would you characterise best in class or best practice engagement between suppliers and retailers? What does that look like from a Coles perspective?
It's just got to be open, honest and transparent. I mean, that's really the key to it. I think when we reflect to what's happened over the last 3 years with COVID and how that's played in, I think that's really forced, not only suppliers but retailers to become much closer together and be more transparent with each other with regards to positioning on ranging, on stock, on availability and all these things. Because ultimately you've got to put the customer first, and during these challenging times I think we've developed much closer relationships with our suppliers, and we've seen that in the Advantage survey, because year after year it's just continued to grow. So we get good feedback from suppliers in terms of how we're adapting to them, and I think we've also been giving that feedback to them as well. So I think that open, honest and transparent approach, and our supply partners are there to grow share, they're there to win as well, and we've just got to do it together, and we've just got to be in sync in a good way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Johnathan. Very insightful. Really appreciate you making the time for us. We love working with you, and thanks again for coming in.
Pleasure, anytime. Cheers, Steve.
Thank you.